church different, right?
Yeah.
Amen. All right, we are not the typical church, but I got to tell you that I love this church. And I am so excited about what God is doing in all of our lives. And if you haven't noticed, we are a place where we just come together just as we are, right? Because God accepts us where we are, and then we grow together. We're able to use our gifts and grow in them, and that we can use those to serve God and to serve each other. Isn't that awesome?
Amen.
Amen? Because we don't leave anybody aside here. We don't care what nationality you are. We don't care what gender you are. We don't care where you've been in life. We don't care what mistakes you've made in the past. We don't care about anything. We just want to join together, right? And learn more about God and connect with each other and connect with God. And we want to connect with our whole world. Amen?
Amen.
Amen? I am super excited. I just can't tell you. All right, so as you know, Pastor Martin talked about Joseph last week. And guess what? We're in Joseph again this week.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, right?
Love Joseph.
I got to tell you, that story is super, super deep.
Yes.
I mean, we could probably spend the next year, don't worry, we're not, but we could probably spend the next year talking just about this story.
Hallelujah.
And all of the nuggets and truth that God has put in there. Because the entire Bible, right, is given for our instruction. And it's going to be about navigating the highs and lows of life. Y'all notice there's highs and lows in this life?
Yes.
Anybody else notice that besides me?
Amen.
All right, and I just think this message has been percolating in my heart for quite a while now. And I truly do believe that God wants to deliver some of you with things that has been holding you back in your life for decades. And if you're younger than that, for years. All right? But I believe that God wants to set us free today. He wants to bring healing in our lives today. Amen? So please have an open heart. Listen to what God is speaking today, because I believe that God is speaking to some of you individually right now. We've already felt His presence. Isn't it awesome? So God is here and He wants to meet your needs. So I'm going to start today, and I'm just going to tell you part of the story to kind of catch you up where we're at. All right? Is that fair enough? All right, if you want to know, it's in Genesis chapter 37 and in chapters 39, 40, and 41. If you want to read the whole story for yourself, it's quite a cool story. So you want to do that, but I'm just going to summarize it for you. Is that all right?
Amen.
Everybody with me?
Yep.
All right. So now Joseph's father, his name was Jacob. All right? And Jacob had 4 wives.
Whoa.
I know. I don't know why any man wants 4 wives. One of us is enough, right? Is that right? All right, but as it is, Jacob has 4 wives. Now, I just want to point out to some of you so that you know, just because something's in the Bible doesn't mean that God approved of it.
Amen.
Doesn't mean that was what God said was okay.
Right.
Right? And if we go back to the very beginning, we can see that God made Adam and Eve.
Amen.
Not Eve and Elizabeth and, Jane, and okay? Right? And so God originally planned it for a man and a woman to become one. So that he could, because in that fullness, the male and the female completes our vision of God. Because here's the truth, and people forget this, is that there is something in man that reflects who God is.
Amen.
But there's something else that I've seen the society has forgotten over many of the years, and that there's also something in woman that reflects who God is. So women, don't forget that, because it's a very powerful thing. And we both together bring a full understanding of who God is. And that is why we are the co-lead pastors of this church, because we believe that in its entirety, together, we bring something that God is doing here. And I believe that this church is part of bringing back that cooperation.
Amen.
Amen? All right. So, as we move on, you have to take things in context and things that are happening. So just because Jacob had 4 wives does not mean he should have had 4 wives. And in fact, if you read the story, you find out that having 4 wives actually caused him quite a lot of problems in his life. And let me just tell you, that's because when we step out of what God has for us, we create problems and issues for ourselves. But as we'll see in the life of Joseph, God works despite our weaknesses, despite our failures, despite the wrong things that we do in our life, because he loves us.
Amen.
But don't mistake his grace for his approval. Amen? Now, he's always loves you and approves you, but that's because of what Jesus did for you, right? But here's what we ended up doing. We tend to do things, we go off of God's path, we get all messed up, and then we turn around and we blame God and say, why is my life a mess? And he said if you had done it my way, maybe it wouldn't be such a problem, right?
Amen.
All right. So anyway, so we have to look at that context and see what's going on. And now just so you know, Joseph was the oldest son of Jacob's favorite wife. Now, if you're going to have 4 wives, I'm pretty sure you shouldn't have a favorite one, but there you go. And Joseph's mother was Jacob's favorite wife. And therefore, Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. Now, I'm going to give you a free parenting tip. Don't do that with your kids. All right? Doesn't work out all that well. All right? And Joseph was number 11 out of 12. Okay? And his youngest brother was also from the same mother as him. All right. So as we're going around, we find out that Joseph is very, of course, favored by his father, and it is not kept a secret. In fact, his father proclaims it by giving him a coat. A beautiful coat that he didn't give to any of his other children. Again, I don't recommend that you do this to your kids, even though you find it in the Bible. All right. And so he's got this coat. And, you know, as kids will, he gets a little arrogant, right? He gets a little prideful, right? And guess what? His brothers aren't real happy with him. And so he might be his father's favorite, but do you think he's his brother's favorite?
No.
I don't think so either. And so there's this tension that's going on in their household, right? And it even tells that, you know, he tattles on his brothers. Again, not real smart, right? And there's this going on in their life. All right? And then I forgot, sorry. And then he started having dreams. And instead of seeing those dreams and just sharing them with his mom and his dad, he goes and brags to his kids that his dream was about the sun and the moon and the stars bowing down to him, that all these 11 bundles of grain are bowing down to him. And what happened is it created more and more jealousy, right? And so as the story goes along, his father one day says, you know what? I want you to go check on your brothers and see how they're doing with those flocks. And then I want you to report back to me. Okay, another parenting tip. That's probably not setting up your kids for a good relationship if you're asking somebody to go tattle on them, right? Now kids, let me tell you, if your brothers and sisters are doing something that's dangerous, tell your parents, all right? All I'm saying though is that there's some wisdom to be gained there, all right? Anyway, so on this day, he goes and he's looking for his brothers. He ends up finding his brothers, but his brothers see him from afar off. Now let me tell you what's going on in the brothers' hearts. They're like, oh man, here comes our little brother. What a brat he is. Right? I don't want to deal with him today. I don't want to hear all his braggedy stuff. And he thinks he's dad's favorite, and you know, that's really unfair. Look at all the work we're doing, and how come God loves him more than me? And let me just tell you, that rage and that anger and that bitterness and that jealousy is burning in their body, right? It's consuming them, because that's what happens when we dwell on the negative things in our life.
Yeah.
All right? And as he's coming, they're like, you know what? We're all alone. Dad's been around, but now there's no one here but us. Let's get rid of this brother once and for all. Let's kill him. Now, I just told you, I'm pretty sure he was a brat, but do you think he deserved killing? No. All right. But they are angry, and I'm telling you, that's what bitterness and rage does in our life. And we hang on to it, and we hold on to it, and we mull it over, and we live there. And eventually it comes out to some horrific nature. All right? And so he comes and he arrives, and then thankfully Reuben, one of the brothers, says, oh, he's got to stop this. And so he convinces his brothers to not kill him and to just throw him into a pit. Just throw him into a pit, but okay. And he wanted to rescue his brother Joseph. But unfortunately for Joseph, his brother, I don't know what happened to him, the story doesn't say, but he wasn't around. And his other brothers saw some traitors coming. And when they saw the traitors, they got another good idea. Well, it wasn't such a good idea, but they thought it was. And they got this idea, and they're like, let's sell our brother. Then we don't have his blood on his hands, but we get rid of our problem. Right? Sometimes we do the wrong thing when we're trying to get rid of our problem, right? Anyway, so they ended up and they sold their brother to these traitors to be a slave. And they sold him for, 20 pieces of silver. All right? And let me just tell you that those 20 pieces of silver, it's kind of hard to figure out how much that is, but I did some research, and it's somewhere around $200 to $400 today. All right? And that 20 shekels of the 20 pieces of silver, actually the price of a slave was 30. So I want you to think about this. Joseph had been taught by his father that he was favored and loved, right? His father had poured favor and love into this boy. But think about what his brothers are speaking to him now. They're saying that you're of no value to me. In fact, I want to kill you. But instead, I'm going to have mercy on you and send you away to be a slave. And I've put a price on your head, and you're not even worth the price of a slave.
Ouch.
Think about what that can do to somebody's identity. Can you imagine having that price on your head? My brothers want me dead. I'm not even worth the price of a slave. And even today, $200 to $400, I mean, it's not a small amount, but neither is it a big amount. I would think that $200 and $400, I think you guys are worth a lot more than that, don't you think?
Amen.
In fact, I'll tell you that you are priceless. There cannot be a price put on your head because Jesus died for you.
Hallelujah. Praise God.
Amen? And so the brothers, they're like, okay, so they got rid of their brother, but they're like, then what are we going to do? And so they cooked up another scheme because, when we mess up, then we got to make it worse, right? And so what they did is they took his tunic, that cloak that his father had given him, that beautiful coat, and they covered it in animal's blood. And they took it back to their father and said, I think that your son has been killed. All right? And then we're going to pick up, if you can, Cameron, if you can hit that next slide for me. In Genesis 39:1, we're going to read what happens to Joseph after he is sent to be a slave. And so when Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. So this boy is now a slave in an Egyptian officer's house. The next slide, please. We're going to find out what happens to him there. And in verse 2 through 6, it says, the Lord was with Joseph. So he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Did you catch that? He succeeded in what?
Everything.
Everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this, and he realized that the Lord was with Joseph. Can you imagine? His master noticed that the Lord was with Joseph. All right? And he noticed that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything that he did. All right? And this pleased Potiphar. So he soon made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord, get this, began to bless Potiphar's household. Did you know you can be a blessing to someone else's household just because God is with you? Right? For Joseph's sake. And all his household affairs ran smoothly. And his crops and his livestock flourished. Look at the blessing that Joseph brought on that household just because of God. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility over everything he owned. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing except what kind of food to eat. I marked it in green so you could see. I want you to notice the Lord was with Joseph. He succeeded. The Lord was with Joseph. He gave him success. The Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. And his household affairs ran smoothly. All his crops and his livestock flourished. And with Joseph there, he didn't have to worry about a thing.
Amen.
Is that not cool? All right? And remember, he's a slave. And he's still able to be successful. Isn't that amazing?
Amen.
All right? And so things are looking up for Joseph, right? We're like, whew, all right, he's okay. He's not dead. He's still a slave. That's not good. But at least he's in a good place. And he's well liked. And he has favor. And he's doing really well at his job. Right? Looks good, right? All right, well, hold on to your horses. Because then we find out what happens. Because then Potiphar's wife took a liking to Joseph. Because guess what? He was kind of handsome. Now, I got to tell you about Potiphar's wife. She was not used to being told no. And she wanted Joseph. Okay, she wanted to sleep with Joseph. But Joseph, being really smart, ran away. So I got to tell you today, there's another advice for you. If you're struggling with something, if you're being tempted by something, run. Run away. Don't stay. Don't mull it over. Don't try to rationalize it. Don't think, I don't know, maybe it's not that bad. I can stand the pressure. No, you can't. Run. Run. Okay? I'm sure that Potiphar's wife was beautiful. Right? I'm sure she was beautiful. He was a young man. He was taken at 17. I'm just saying. All right? He ran. He ran away. All right? And that's what we should do. But unfortunately for Joseph, when he went away in such haste that he left his cloak behind. Now, remember I told you, Potiphar's wife, she's not used to being told no. So she's not very happy that she didn't get to persuade Joseph to join her in her schemes. Right? And I'm going to tell you, especially you young people, that, you know what, let me just back that up, because, you know, we adults, we're not immune to peer pressure, are we? Okay, sometimes we're even worse. We hassle the youth, but you know what, sometimes we're even worse. But I'm going to tell you, sometimes when you're trying to do the right thing, you're going to have friends that come against you. You're going to have people that make fun of you. You're going to have people that are going to try to get you back down to where you were, to their level. And I'm telling you, run. Run. All right? So Potiphar's wife isn't there. And so she took that cloak and she went to her husband and crying and says, "Your slave tried to rape me." So Potiphar, and can you imagine if you're your husband, he didn't even check, I'm sure, to see if this was true. He's angry. Can you imagine the anger of, and on top of this Joseph's a slave. He has no rights, he has no this, and he has the audacity to rape his wife. Now we all know he didn't do it, right? But can you imagine the rage that Potiphar was in? So Potiphar threw him in jail. By the way, the Bible says threw him. I'm quite sure he was not gentle with him. He threw him into prison. So here's poor Joseph. He was loved by his father, favored by his father, thrown into a pit by his brothers, deemed that they wanted to kill him, but they had mercy upon him, sold him into slavery instead. Looks like he's doing okay, right? He's succeeding in all that he does, and then he's accused falsely. Can you imagine? And he's thrown into prison for something he didn't do. If you can go to the next slide, please. In Genesis 39, 20 through 23, it says, "So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. But the Lord was with Joseph in the prison." Did you guys hear that? The Lord was with Joseph where?
In the prison.
In the prison. Did you know that God is with you no matter where you go?
Amen.
And showed him his faithful love. And the Lord made Joseph a favorite There's that word again, right? With the prison warden. And before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners and over everything that happened in the prison. He's noticing a theme here. And the warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed.
Amen.
Even in the oh, are we okay? What happened to my
Well,
even in the I'll yell. Even in this prison, in the depths of this despair, right? To get this not working. Are we good? Or do I need to switch? Oh, he's switching me. You want me to take it off, Micah? Sorry. Technical difficulties. Can you just hear
better,
you?
is that it?
There you go. Thank you. We good? Everybody there? Oh, this one's not on either.
Turn it on.
It's on. Are we good now? Anybody hear me?
Yes.
Are we back on? Woohoo! All right, there we go. All right. So even in the midst of this terrible place, I mean, can you imagine that prison cannot be a pleasant place, right? It cannot be pleasant. And yet the Lord was with Joseph, and he made everything he did prosper. Don't you want that to happen in your life?
Amen.
No matter what the circumstances in your life, that you are able to succeed. Don't you want that? Let's figure out how he did it, all right? All right. And I want to say something here. Remember, he got there not by any fault of his own. He was falsely accused. In fact, he did the right thing.
Yep.
Like I told you, he ran away. So I'm going to tell you that sometimes when we do the right thing, it doesn't always look like right away that we're rewarded for it. Doesn't mean that you won't be in the future. Doesn't mean that it's still not the right way. Because I'm telling you that our lives will be better in the long run if we do things God's way, despite the fact that in the short run it might look worse for us.
Amen.
Thank you, Micah. All right, I love our tech guys because you know what? I am so non-techy, and they are awesome figuring all of this out. Are we back on? Woohoo! Now I got, yeah. Thank you. I got it. We are back on, so I can throw my hands around like I do, right? All right. So anyway, so bad things can happen even when we're doing things God's way. But I want you to know that God always sees.
Yes.
He always sees, and he will always honor you for doing that. And as I said, remember, people will not always honor you for doing the right thing. In fact, they will try to get you to do the opposite, right? But if you follow God now, you will be blessed later.
Amen.
Amen? All right? And when you think you're in a mess and things aren't going your way, even when you've done things the right way, don't give up. Do not grow weary in doing good, for in due process you will reap. All right? Don't believe the lie that it isn't worth it to do things God's way, because it always, always is. Now, sometime later, the king's chief cupbearer and his baker were thrown into prison along with Joseph. And what happened is they started having these dreams. All right? But they were really upset and that nobody could tell them what their dreams meant. Okay? So nobody could tell them what their dreams meant. And so they were really sad. And so it got back to Joseph, and he was a dreamer, right? God had been giving him dreams. God has given us gifts. I will tell you, there is a gift. And God can speak to you in dreams. Now I gotta tell you, some of your dreams are just because you ate pizza last night. All right? Not all of your dreams come from God. All right? But it is also possible that God can speak to you in your dream. And if he does, he can give you the interpretation or bring you a friend that can help. All right? And so Joseph was operating in one of his gifts. All right? And so they brought him and they said, these are our dreams. And so Joseph said, look, I don't interpret dreams, but my God does. Which is what happens. The gifts operate through us. All right? And as they told them their dreams, what he told them became true. All right? And so the baker was killed and the cupbearer was restored to his position, just like Joseph had told them. And Joseph asked the cupbearer, and he said, please, when you see Pharaoh, will you please tell him that I'm here or no fault of my own? Will you please try to get me out of this prison? All right? But the cupbearer, you know what he did? He forgot all about Joseph. In fact, the Bible says, this is terrible. You know what the Bible says? It says he never gave him another thought. Isn't that terrible? He didn't even give him another thought. For 2 years. Now, I don't know about you and me, but I would start to get a little discouraged if I was left in prison and I helped somebody out and they forgot me for 2 years. But we don't read of Joseph complaining. Right? But then what happens after 2 years is Pharaoh had a dream. And he went around and nobody could interpret Pharaoh's dreams. And all of a sudden, the cupbearer remembers. Oh yeah, there's this guy in prison. He kind of has this gift to interpret dreams from God. All right, and so Pharaoh says, well then go get him. Bring him out. I want to hear this guy. So they go get Joseph and they have to clean him up because remember, prison's not nice, guys. All right, so they clean up Joseph. They bring him in front of Pharaoh. And so he says, look, I can't interpret your dream, but God can. And so he tells Pharaoh the meaning of those dreams. And in fact, he tells him those dreams are in fact from God and not from that pizza or the lasagna or whatever you had last night. These dreams are from God. And let me tell you what they mean. They mean that the next 7 years are going to be full of abundance. It's going to be a bumper crop. There's going to be blessing on your crops. You're going to get so much food, more than you can eat for the next 7 years. But after those 7 years, there's going to be this huge famine that is going to consume the entire earth. And you will forget all of the prosperity of those 7 years. So this is what you need to do. In those 7 years of plenty, you need to save all of that food. Keep it, guard it, make sure that it's not eaten, right? Save it up because you're going to need it to live in those next 7 years, because God always is looking ahead, and He can help us and provide for us even when there are horrible things going on in our world. And I think that's a little relevant today.
Amen.
It doesn't matter what our economy does. God can still be with us and bless us despite what's going on in our country or in our world.
Amen.
Amen? And so he tells them what to do. And he says, you need somebody in charge to gather all this up, to oversee this. And then you're going to be able to survive this famine. And so in Genesis 41, 37 through 43, this is what we read happened. So Joseph's suggestions were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. Next one, honey. It's Genesis 41, 37 to 43. There we go. And it's just received by Pharaoh and his officials. So Pharaoh asked his officials, can we find anyone else like this man, so obviously filled with the Holy Spirit? You think they recognized that God was moving in this man's life?
Hallelujah.
All right. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has revealed the meaning of these dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent or wise as you. This little boy, now a man, right? You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt. And then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand, and he placed it on Joseph's fingers, a sign of authority, folks, all right? And he dressed him with fine linen, right? And he hung a gold chain around his neck. And then he had Joseph ride in the chariot reserved for his second in command. Kneel down, they were commanded. And so Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or a foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval.
Amen. Wow.
Think about the power and authority that was just given to Joseph.
Wow.
After so many years of hard things. So we see that Joseph is finally lifted up. He's finally put in the place where he was made, the calling that God has put on his life. He was raised up to deliver Egypt and all, and he has now come into the calling that God has for his life. And I want to tell you that things got better and better for him. You know what? Pharaoh gave him a wife. And then guess what? He had 2 sons. And then he ruled as Pharaoh's second in command. Like I said, he reunited with his family. And he ended up saving the entire known world, basically,
Amen.
at that time. And here I want to point out something to you. After Joseph's second son was born, he said in verse 52, if you can bring that up for me to Cameron. Yes. What did I say, 52? I'm sorry. Yes, it is. 41:52. Genesis 41:52. God has made me fruitful in this land of my grief.
Amen.
God has made me fruitful in this land of my grief. Any of you living in the land of grief right now? Any of you dwelling in the hard things of life? Any of you drowning in sorrow? Any of you having a hard time in life today? I want you to know that God wants to make you fruitful right where you are in the land of your grief.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Right where you are in the land of your grief.
Praise God.
Are you hearing me,
Amen.
church? Now, most of our prayers are, God deliver me, right? There's nothing wrong with those prayers. Hear me. Nothing wrong with those prayers. And God eventually delivers Joseph, right? But sometimes it doesn't happen in our time frame, does it, folks? And I'm going to tell you, you don't have to wait until you're out to start praising God. You don't have to wait until you're out until you're successful. You don't have to wait until you're out before you can be used of God. God will use you right where you are in the midst of your suffering.
Amen.
Because there will be hard times in this life. And God will use us in spite of them.
Amen. Praise God.
Amen? Let me give you an example of this. I have a friend, as you know, I've talked about it a little bit, and she has been given a very short time to live. She's dying, barring a great miracle. All right? She's 52. Very close friend of mine. But I want you to know something. Is that not a land of the grief, people? Do you think her family's not grieving? Do you think, right? Is she not dwelling in the land of grief? Well, let me tell you about my friend. And I love my friend, and she's very awesome. And I tell her, and I say this with all God's honesty, there will be more people in heaven because of her than me. Because of the way she has served God all of her life. She's a hospice nurse, and she has been with people in those last dying dress where they have called out to their Savior, and she's led them to Jesus.
Amen.
And let me tell you how she's reacting right this, because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure I would be. I'm really not sure I would be. But you know what she's doing? She's throwing a party. And I'm not kidding. You go to her house, there's literally a minimum of 5 people, usually like 10 or 11. And she has invited all her friends because she has touched so many lives, hundreds. They're flying out from other states. They're coming from all around town, and they're coming to spend time with her because they love her. And you know what she's doing? She's enjoying it. She's loving it. And she says, she'll tell me, she'll make fried plates. She's like, I don't care if it makes me tired. I have all of eternity to rest. I want to make memories with my friends.
Amen.
I want to enjoy these last days of my life. And that's what she's doing. And I'm going to tell you that there is a peace that exudes from her. I've never seen such a peace. I've seen people in peace. But I am telling you that this peace is so deep that it is felt in the room. Have you ever felt peace? Have you ever felt something in the room so strong? I am telling you that it exudes from her. And as she said, I cannot lose. If I am healed, God gets the glory. Hallelujah. If I am not, and I go to heaven, I will be healed in heaven, and I will see the face of Christ.
Amen.
I cannot lose.
Amen. Praise God.
And that peace emanates from her body. And I am telling you, it is powerful. And do you know that there are people right now being touched by the peace that they feel from my friend? Those that have been far from Christ, and they are sensing her peace, and they're saying to her, hey, what have you got? You are so peaceful. You're making me think. I've never seen peace like this.
Amen.
So in the land of this family's grief, God is making her fruitful.
Amen.
And I am telling you, and I've known her a long time, she's just like you and I.
Yep. Yep.
We went to college. Well, we weren't in college together. We went to church during college years together. We hung out with her husband. We all knew each other before we were married. Guess what? We were dumb and stupid. Right? But she gave her life over to Jesus.
Amen.
And He has transformed her, and He has given her this peace. And that peace that transcends all understanding can be given to you. God's gifts are free for everyone.
Amen.
She didn't just arise to this holy level. She just simply put her trust in Jesus. So I'm telling you that wherever you're at in your life right now, if you're going through a hard time, I want you to stop and breathe and see that God wants to make you fruitful in the land of your grief. So that brings us, big surprise, to our new perspective principle. Because you know what? We like to give you a new perspective on life, right? So it's one of the other reasons we're new perspective. Because we believe that we need a new perspective. When Jesus comes in and transforms us, He gives us a new perspective that will help us live this life as conquerors, right?
Hallelujah.
And so the new perspective principle is, next one, sorry to Cameron, is God wants to make you fruitful in the land of your grief. Or God wants to make you fruitful even in the midst of your grief.
Praise.
Even in the midst. Before you get out. Before there's a testimony, folks. He wants to make you fruitful now. So I want to look at this next chart. Cameron, if you can throw up the next slide for me. I'm just going to do a quick overview of Joseph's life. Okay, forgive my drawing. I am not an artist. Anybody have an artist you want to draw my next slides? Happy or more than happy to do that, all right? So, forgive my drawing. I should have had Crystal do it, but you know what? I blew it. So she wasn't available, and, well, you know. So, all right. So he starts off, and he's loved by his father, right? He's loved and favored by his father. There's a deep sense of identity that's put in his life right there. All right? But then he's hated by his brothers. That drops him to that next low, right? And then he has these dreams, and he's all excited, right? But then his brothers plot to kill him, right? And then he's only thrown into a pit. I mean, at least it's better than being killed, right? So he's kind of back up on a high. And then guess what? He's sold into slavery. Way back down again. And he's successful in running Potiphar's household. And the Lord was with him. And then he drops back down because he's pursued by Potiphar's wife. He's got a problem and a trial in his life, right? But then he does the right thing and he runs away. So he's back up on top of the world, right? And then he's thrown into prison for something he didn't even do. He's back down in the depths of despair, right? Yeah. And then he's put in charge of everything he did, and he succeeded. And the Lord was with him. But then what happens? He's forgotten by the cupbearer for 2 years. And by the way, he was in either prison or slavery. We don't know the exact amounts of each, but together, prison and slavery, 13 years. You think that's a long time to wait for your dream to happen. All right, so he's forgotten by the cupbearer, but then things start to get a little better, right? And then he's remembered by the cupbearer. He interprets Pharaoh's dreams. He's made second in command. He's given a wife. He has kids. He saves his family. He reunites with them. And then the crowning glory of all, he saves Egypt and the surrounding countries.
Amen. Wow.
Amen? Do you think those lows were worth it? So I want you to see, as we're looking at this chart, if we look at this chart one way, guess what? We can focus on, we see all these valleys, all these lows, all these tragedies, all these disappointments, all the discouragements. everything that has gone wrong with his life, and we can focus right there and see all those lows. Right? We can see all of that. We can see him with him going from, he gets out of one problem only to get dropped right back into the next problem. Anybody else do that in their life? You seem to get right out of one problem, as soon as you fix that one, you're down to the next. All right, I think Joseph understood, right? All right? And every time he thinks he gets a break, he ends up worse. Anybody else happen to them? Honesty, right? All right, and I got to tell you, when we look at our lives, don't we see a lot of the same thing? We see the same things, right? And we overcome one thing just to succumb to the next, right? We take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Right? We get tired, exactly. We get tired, right? We're tired. Right? We get discouraged, right? And we feel like, our life is like a roller coaster that we can't get off. And it won't stop. Right? We're just going from one high to the next low. Sometimes we're just going from low to lower. Right? Sometimes. But I'm going to tell you something, and this is going to change your life. The problem's a matter of perspective. I know you're going to say, Pastor Alexandra, you're nuts. That can't be true. And you know what? You just had this glorious life. You must be some holy woman of God. You don't have any issues, so what are you doing? Why are you telling me this? How can you tell me that all my problems in my life, you don't know what's come against me? How can you tell me that it's just a matter of perspective? Well, I got to tell you. Ask my mom. I've had some lows in my life. I've had quite a lot of lows in my life. I'm not holy by any stretch of imagination as my husband. All right? But I am a woman who wants to serve God with all her heart and all her soul and all her mind.
Praise God.
Amen.
Amen? I don't always do it. That's my heart. So I'm going to tell you that it's all a matter of perspective. Excuse me. Next slide, please, to Cameron. And this is a quote from Corrie ten Boom. And if you don't know her, she, in World War II, she lived in Holland, and she and her family saved hundreds of Jews because they hid them in their house. And this is a quote. And then she was betrayed by a countryman, and she was thrown into a concentration camp. She was the only one of her family to survive, to my knowledge, right? And this is her quote. It says, "If you look at the world, you'll be distressed. If you look within, you'll be depressed. If you look at God, you'll be at
Rest.
Okay, here's the thing. If we look around at all the stuff that's going around us, if we look at our circumstances, and we think about, and we focus on what's going on around us, you know what? We're going to get discouraged. We're going to get scared. We're going to get distressed. That's what's going to happen. If we look inside of us, okay, guess what? You know what? You're going to get depressed. You want to know why? Because there's nothing good inside of you apart from Jesus. All right? And I want you to know that most depression is caused by too much inward reflection and anger. All right? Because we look within and we agonize over things and we take things apart, and it creates a depression in us, and then we're gripped and we can't get free. All right? And by the way, I'm aware that there are some chemical deficiencies as well. And by me saying this, I am not at all saying that you shouldn't take medicine. You have an issue, you do what God, you know what, you do whatever you got to do. All right? But all I'm telling you is the root cause. All right? And we don't have the answer. So we're looking within ourselves. Where do you think you're going to get the answer? Hello? Did you create the universe? I didn't think so. All right? So we look within ourselves, and what do we find? Nothing. All right? And so what happens, we lose hope and we start spiraling down. In fact, when we look within ourselves, all we find is all those terrible things we've done in our life. And all the ways that we failed, and all the ways we don't measure up, and we get worse and worse and worse, and we spiral down. And the more we look inside for the answer, the more we fall apart. All right? And you know, guess what? In this society, we're even taught to do that. Are we not? But that only brings depression and anxiety. And it's only by getting God's perspective that we can find joy. And when we focus on God, all right, and that's when we're going to thrive. You guys want to thrive in this life. Get your eyes off yourself and the world around you, and get your eyes on God. That is the only way to thrive in this life. But I want to look at that chart in a different way, all right? The camera, if you bring up that next slide. Because if we look at that same thing in another way, all right, instead of those ups and downs and those valleys, right, of all the trials and tragedies in his life, what do we find? We find a straight line, God's favor. That's straight, guys. The scarlet thread of Jesus' blood that courses through our lives is straight, of God's love and his favor and empowerment. And then let's look at that again. Let's look at Joseph's life again. Because in the beginning, he was given a father that showed him that he knows he is loved and favored. That impacted his life. Guess what? He could have been killed and his life cut short, and he wasn't. God rescued him, Amen. And he was not killed. He found success, and the Lord was with him. Right? Potiphar's household was blessed because of him. Not only was he blessed, his presence blessed others.
Amen.
And then the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. I think that's kind of hard to do. Right? And then everything he did succeeded. And he was taken out of prison and he was made second in command. That's pretty powerful from being a little bratty boy. Right? To a slave, to a prisoner, to second in command. And then he was used by God to save Egypt and the other countries. And other countries in Egypt were blessed because of him. It's all a matter of perspective. What do you have your eyes on? Are you looking at the things that have broken you? Are you looking at the ways God has delivered you? Was where we put our focus. When we look back over our life, and I guarantee you, and trust me, someday I'll have to share some more with you, but there are things in my life that are terrible. And I could choose to look back on my life and be destroyed. It could have ruined my identity. It could have ruined so many things in my life. But I look back and I see the hand of God. Amen. Lifting me out of that pit. That pit of despair. That pit of brokenness. And I'm telling you, if you don't believe, ask my husband. He met me when I was 18 and I was a disaster, was I not?
Yes.
This young college girl in church, very like this one. It was about this size. And every week, you'd find me at the altar, weeping. Oh, and by the way, I'm not talking little pretty little tears that kind of roll down my face. I'm talking that ugly cry, weeping. Right, that ugly, your nose turns red, your face turns red, all your makeup runs, weeping at the altar, begging God to heal my life, to put me back together.
Amen.
Amen. All I got to tell you is all I did is seek God, guys. I had some wonderful women around me. He spoke wisdom into my life. I grabbed a hold of God and he yanked me out of my pit.
Hallelujah.
And he can do the same for you. And we can see that despite, for many years, it looked like Joseph wasn't going to accomplish what God had set out for him, doesn't it? I mean, can you imagine? I mean, it turns out from the very beginning, it looks like there's no hope for this kid, right? And yet, at the end, he accomplished all that God had set out for him. God made him for a purpose. And I don't know what your purpose is, but I am telling you right now that God made you for a purpose. Amen. And he's not going to rest until you get there.
Hallelujah. Praise God.
So I want to tell you, don't judge your life by the problems that you have. We look at our problems way too much. Don't judge your life by your problems. And you can walk in God's favor despite the issues in your life. All right? Joseph ended up blessing everybody around him no matter what circumstance he found himself in, good or bad. He was there. Corrie ten Boom blessed people in the middle of a concentration camp. I think I'd find that a little hard.
Yeah.
All right? Paul from the Bible, the Apostle Paul, wrote most of the Bible from prison.
Yep.
From prison, guys. All right? You don't know what God has planned for you. We just have to keep that right perspective. That's all we got to do. And having that right perspective comes out of knowing our true identity. Do you guys know that? Who does God say you are? Now I want to tell you that Joseph found his identity in the love and favor of his Father. Did you hear me? He found his identity in the love and favor of his Father. But I want to make a case for you that he could have easily found his identity in being a victim of bullying and of human trafficking. And he could have found his identity there.
Yeah.
He could have sunk into the pits of despair and given up and found his identity in those things that came against him. Don't find your identity in the things that happen to you. That's not who you are.
Hallelujah.
You are a son or a daughter of the Most High God.
Amen.
All right? So if you've been bullied, if you've had someone come against you, if you've had things come against you in your life, I'm going to tell you, don't look down. Don't look back. Look up to your deliverer. Get your identity from the love of your Father. And some of you had an awesome father, and that's great, so you probably have a better idea of who God is, but I'm telling you, God's greater. Some of you didn't have such a hot father, and you know what? It doesn't matter, because we all, if you've accepted Jesus as your Savior, have God, our perfect Father.
Amen.
So you look up and get your identity from your Heavenly Father. Because He has implanted in you the very DNA that you hold.
Amen.
He has created you for a purpose and a reason. He has given you your identity. You have worth because He says you have worth. And I don't care what the world around you says. I don't care what friends have said. I don't care what your parents have said if it's been negative. I am telling you that you are worth something because God says so.
Amen.
That you get your identity from God and God alone.
Amen.
So we put our focus in the wrong things. Don't look back at all the hard things in your life, right? Don't look into that. You can go through the same things and you can look, like I said, Joseph could look back and see all those valleys, right? Or you can look back at that straight line of Jesus' blood.